don't even know how to turn my phone on. Tony, I'm turning my phone off. If I have to use my phone, I'm afraid it'll ring.
This regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for February 18th, 2014 will come to order. I'll ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. All right, our first item on scheduled for a public hearing is Ordinance 14-01. This would close the unnamed alley located between White Street in front of the Gorham McBain Public Library, approximately 179 feet, to a second unnamed alley running along the west side of the Gorham McBain Public Library and conveying the property to Robertson County and the City of Springfield for the benefit of the library and its expansion. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to make a comment pertaining to this issue? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is concluded. Now we're at item 2 under public hearings, and that item is in regard to Ordinance 14-02. This ordinance would change the schedule of fees and charges for this year for the Legacy Golf Course by reseating the previous ordinance 12-12 in its entirety and substituting a new schedule of fees. Now I know we've got several people who have talked with me this week, and some of the aldermen, I'm sure, as well, who are very interested in this matter. We'll ask you as you come to the, if you have a comment to make, you need to limit your comments to about a couple of minutes. Come to the podium that's to my left, give your name, and just state your concerns pertaining to this matter. It's not a question and answer session. It's simply a matter to have public input into this. So, do I see any hands of anybody who wishes to speak on this subject? Come forward, sir.
Mayor, may I give each of you a copy of what I want to say?
Yes, sir. You may do that before you speak.
Thank you.
Boy, they're sticking together.
No, all right. Thanks, sir.
My name is Wayne Stevens. I've been a member of this Robertson County community for 42 years, lived on the golf course for 13. And I've just got a few things that I'm not making an objection to anything. I'm just stating some facts. We've got a $26 pay per round for the golf course now, and 60 rounds of $26 equals $1,560. The committee here last week said that we would pay a $1,560 annual fee and limit that to 60 rounds. Well, who in the world is going to pay $1,560 up front when they can pay $26 a round and play and not have that money stretched out, gone for 12 months? Second thing is, there are no courses within 50 miles of Springfield or anywhere else that I've ever researched that limits any of the play to 60 rounds. Any limit of any kind, anywhere. Highland Rim offers family passes for $1,800, including carts with GPSs, and no limit on rounds of play. Individual weekday membership is only $925. Unlimited play with GPS carts. 12 Stones in Goodlettsville has a $1,500 unlimited play membership. Rolling Hills in Gallatin has a $219 weekly membership fee, but you do have to pay for the card. And it seems to me that all of us, are shooting ourselves in the foot by limiting the number of plays that we can have on this course. There's a lot of retired people that live here, and that's why we moved here, to play golf. So if you're shooting yourself in the foot on the fee structure, then you're limiting the people that are going to want to join this course. And with all the new homes that are projected to be built here, I can't understand why anybody would want to limit that. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you. You presented that well. Thank you for the handout as well. Do I see another hand? Peggy?
I'm sure many of y'all know me. My name's Mike Gallagher. We moved down here from Chicago in 1961, so I've been a member of the community for many years. My son is currently a junior in high school. He has broke both the scoring records last year as a player for the high school golf team. And as far as the rates go, we're charging the high school players to play. I don't know of any high school player that plays tennis, basketball, baseball, whatever sport has ever been charged any fee. On a second thought, I run a game. We have a weekend game. I have approximately 60 players that play in my game. Maybe 15%, I talked with John Stewart, works in the pro shop, of our players are members. Now, I have all them people coming to me and asking me, what are we going to play next year because of the fee rates. I can't tell them anything. I'm going to see how the meeting goes, and I just wanted to put that on to y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Is there someone else who wants to make their views known? Anyone else? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We will take up item 1.5, and that's the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of January the 21st. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, if you favor the approval of these minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Y'all are bashful. No? Motion carried. All right. Let me see here. I'm going to, unless there's some objection, I'm going to move this item 2.4 about the fees and so forth at the Legacy, because I know that's why a lot of people came. And I'm going to move that up. And when we get through with this, I would ask you to do one thing, and that's to please exit the room quietly, because we have other items on the rest of the agenda. So let's look at item 2.4, and that's the fee schedule that we've had. Actually, we've had probably about 5 nights of discussion on this up to this point, because we started in one direction and then made some changes and didn't raise the fee rate, the annual fee, but put the cap on and so forth. And I want to say this about this whole issue. I think those of you who've been, particularly those of you who've been 2 or 3 times, know that we have discussed this probably as much as any item that I remember being discussed in a long time. And there's several sides to this argument. And I appreciate some views. I had a conversation with somebody Sunday, particularly about the youth aspect of this and the golf teams at the high schools and all. And I'm very sympathetic to that. However, we've gone to a certain, and I want to point out something else. When I looked last week, when we talked about the cap on the fees and that type of thing, as you look at the revenue of the golf course, and you need to know the lay of the land with that, we're down to 3 or 4 years, is it, Paul, of finishing the payment for it?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay. So we're paying $500,000 to $550,000 a year debt service on the golf course, and we're well along with that to where, you know, it's like 4 more years or so, and it's going to be ours. Now, I'm just talking about the capital outlay, the note, if you will, the mortgage. Then the actual operations of the golf course come in on an average about $150,000 short of revenue versus the cost of operating it. Now, a lot of recreational activities don't pay for themselves. We know that. We try to have a well-rounded activities here, whether it's at the center, whether it's on the baseball fields, whether it's the tennis courts and all those kind of things. We have helped the high school with a lot of their sports, and most recently we've contributed $125,000 to Springfield High to help advance the softball field that's being built there. And so our record of supporting high school sports is pretty sound, I think. But as I've heard different aspects of this, maybe the cap was not the right kind of thing to do. But when you looked at the annual memberships, and were there 50 people on there, 40 people, whatever it was, I didn't find but 10 or 12, as I looked through that list, that played more than 60 rounds. So as we looked at that, how can we were lowering a lot of the other fees throughout the schedule. Many at least, were lowered. So I thought, this is one way we will roll back that increase in fees. It was going up. We changed that, and thinking that if only 10 or 12 people were harmed by this, rather than everybody, when we proposed raising the annual fee, maybe this is the middle ground. Well, obviously, with some people, it's not. But that's the reason we have differing opinions, and I respect everybody's opinion. Nobody that's talked to me about it has been anything other than polite, and I appreciate it, and I hope I've shown you the respect that you deserve as well. I'm not totally satisfied with this, and I have known of us before to approve a set of fees and come back later and see something in there that wasn't right and tweak it. And I hope that's what we'll do. But we've gone on now having, I believe, 5 meetings on this subject. And golf, after today and what tomorrow holds, we've got golf season's underway. We're going to have to move on with some of this. But where I think there are some inequities that I have become aware of later in this, we'll try to see, in my opinion, we'll try to come back and revisit this issue. Now, I want to point out this, though. Keep in mind the position we are in as the people who oversee the budget of the city. The thing that stood out to me last week when I was looking at the total revenue for the course, the total course revenue last year was $734,000. You had to look back 10 years to 2004, I believe it was, to find a year that the revenue was that low on the old schedule. Now, do I expect it again to make a profit? That's not why we built it. We built it to have an asset to this community that would cause people to want, like Mr. Stevens, to have his house on the golf course, and a lot of people have. I'm still disappointed that it's not built out like it was intended to be. But that doesn't mean that can't happen. But I want you to know we don't take this lightly. But we've got to try to come as close as we can to a break-even point on that golf course. And we need that revenue to be up closer to $850,000 to $900,000, not $734,000. That's why we looked at this with new management, and we had heard from many of you who did not approve of the last management. We heard that. We had meetings with them, and they're not here anymore. So we do listen. But it's a little hard when your new team comes in and they outline to you things that need to be done. If we don't look like we give an ear to that, we're not supporting people before they've really had a chance to prove themselves. So I want you to see the angles at which we viewed this. So it's now before us. Is there a motion that this be considered on its third and final reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, now any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I certainly have to support what you says, and the main point of hitting home is guarding the public purse, a business position, and stability for new people coming in. And so this is the only orderly way that we can really do it. And as for high school kids, I know I have been a hearted advocate about taking care of Springfield High School. And I'm gonna say this too, most high school kids that play, their parents can afford it. And, you know, so we're not gonna use the argument about poor kids, minority kids, because most of them don't play it anyway. And then for other sports, you got to come up with more than $11 to play. $100 here, $200 here for even basketball, football, stuff like that. So the thing about it is stability. Guarding the public purse and giving a vision. Just like you say, yes, I'm very disappointed that those houses are not built out. And yes, we're going to advocate getting it built out pretty soon. But the thing about it is, you know, we have to just run a business and watch our personal feelings. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Snyder, you would enter.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I believe our daily fees are fair. Our membership is not fair, and we are going to run these folks to other golf courses. We have too much competition. And I believe when we come back in a year's time, we're going to see that we have made a mess of our memberships. And I will encourage you to continue to look at this.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
I do, sir.
Okay, Ms. Ellis, I'll get you.
We really need to pass something tonight. If not, we start over again, and that's three more readings. But I would like for us to revisit some things that we're doing with high school kids. In particular Springfield, but there may be others. I just think that this is something we need to do, and I can do it in the form of a motion or amendment, or we can just make that part of the motion. I don't care how we do it. But here's what I would like to do. I'd like to revisit this in June. Now, that's not too far down the road. That's before the high schools will start. During the month of June, trying to get a budget, we'll be meeting every 2 weeks. So from June, it will not take 3 months to get it passed. We could have it easily passed by the end of July or the middle of July. So that's one thing that I would like a commitment of or an amendment for, us to revisit that this June. What do I need?
I would say, I think an amendment would be in order.
Well, just make sure you can pass the fees. I mean,
Can we put it on the agenda for
Oh.
next month and start to talk about the children, because
Okay.
aren't they going to play golf soon?
you can always bring that up.
The youth?
Why don't you just ask if they be placed on the next month, on the March agenda?
So we don't need a motion?
No, we will put it on the agenda
Okay, so it'll be on the
That's
agenda
it,
next
yes.
month? Okay, I'm fine.
to deal with that part of it. Okay. Now, Paul?
Yeah, I would, I'm sorry, I would like to just briefly address Mr. Stevens' concerns. Last year, the current fees for the daily, and we're not talking anybody in a senior or junior level play here. We're talking the person that's going to pay the full fare. Last year, the weekday rates were $36. They're going down to $33. The weekend rates were $48. They're going down to $40. Now, with regard to the $26, that is totally not right. Your daily fee is $33. With the Advantage card, you're going to pay $29. On the weekend rates, with cart, you're paying $40. With the Advantage card, you're paying $35. The $26 is what a senior plays. It's a big discount. And the seniors, which he neglected to tell you were, the seniors on the weekday are 26, with the advantage they're paying 22. Also, there is now a senior rate on the weekend, which we never had, which is 35, but you can pay 30 with the Advantage card. So yes, there is every incentive to pay and get 60 rounds at $26. You're getting 35% savings on the golf course, and that's the bet. We have to make money every time people go out and play, and that's all I have to say.
Clay, did you have, Mr. Basin, I don't believe you commented. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Anything further?
Ready for vote.
All right. You've heard this discussed amply. Vote your preference when your name is called.
Snyder.
No.
Carneal.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 5-1.
All right. This matter has been approved. You've heard that the item will be on the next agenda to discuss the matter of youth fees, etc. Now, if someone wanted to leave, they're welcome to now. You did the last time, but if you want to sit here for the rest of the meeting, we're glad to have you. So we're going back to, give it about a minute, and we're going back to item 2.1. All right, 2.1 is third and final reading on amending our conditions of service manual by amending the section entitled Water and adding the new policy meters that are loaned for bulk sales of water. All right, is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second?
Second.
In discussion. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ellis.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
2.2, third and final reading on the ordinance 13-28, water and wastewater. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Carneal.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Ellis. Hubbard.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
Thank you. Item 2.3, this is the matter of closing the alley near the library. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that matter?
Yes, sir,
Go ahead.
ma'am. There's an alley that comes from Fifth Avenue West. It goes all the way to White's, no, is that?
Goes to Fourth Avenue.
Fourth Avenue. Are you closing it all the way, or is this closing?
I want to clarify
Up
that.
to the,
No, it's not part of that at all.
Are you,
This is you wouldn't even know this alley was there.
is it parallel Fifth Avenue?
Yes, correct. It's going parallel Fifth Avenue, going through the parking lot of the library as it is now. It is not part of that.
okay.
That alley will stay on.
Because I actually think that's part of the parking lot.
It's part of the parking lot.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, that's what it is. That is a little hard to understand.
It's just housekeeping.
All right, any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right, we've done 2.4, now we're on first reading of ordinance 14-03, that's your item 2.5. Since it's a first reading, it has to be read in its entirety.
Ordinance 14-03, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2014 annual budget for the city of Springfield by amending certain general fund and utility fund budgets. Whereas it is necessary to amend the city of Springfield annual budget for fiscal year 2014 in order to meet the requirements of the city charter. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee, that the City of Springfield annual budget for fiscal year 2014 is hereby amended to make necessary changes to expenditures and revenues within the funds and departments as set forth in Exhibit A attached. All ordinances, resolutions, and policies in conflict herewith are hereby rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
All right, is there a motion this be considered?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Mason.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right. 2.6 is also a first reading. This rezones a tract of land at 2502 South Main. It's .81 acres is the particular tract, and that's being changed from residential or restricted industrial to CS, commercial services. Ms. Connie, please read it.
Ordinance 14-04, an ordinance rezoning a .81 acre tract of property located at 2502 South Main Street owned by Walter B. Wittenberg from RI Restricted Industrial to CS Commercial Services. Whereas Walter Wittenberg has requested that a .81 acre tract that he owns at 2502 South Main Street and further described in a legal description prepared by Stephen E. Arts and Associates dated September 25, 2013 and attached to this document as Exhibit A be rezoned from RI Restricted Industrial to CS Commercial Services. And whereas the Springfield Planning Commission has reviewed the request and recommends that the property be rezoned from RI to CS. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. Section 1, a .81 acre lot located at 2502 South Main Street owned by Walter B. Wittenberg as shown on surveyor's description prepared by Stephen E. Arts and Associates, registered land surveyors on September 25, 2013, and further described in Exhibit A attached, is hereby rezoned from RI Restricted Industrial to CS Commercial Services. Section 2, all ordinances, resolutions, and policies in conflict herewith are hereby rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
All right, you've heard the reading of this ordinance. Is there a motion that be considered?
So moved.
Second? Second?
Second.
Okay, excuse me. All right, any discussion?
Does this, yes, sir. Does
Go
this
ahead.
tract of land have an office on it? Is this the tract there that has a little office?
It has a building on it.
Has a building on it. What does this allow them to do with it?
Well, it will allow him to put business in there. His property on the back is industrial. He makes machine parts or something. And this will allow him to have a commercial business up there, a lighter business.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Snyder. Aye. Carneal.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right, now, Resolution 14-02 is next on your agenda. That's item 2.7. It declares certain property as surplus and authorizes the disposal of such property. I believe we've had a list of what that consisted of. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Carneal.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right. Now, under administrative, item 3.1 is to discuss and possibly act on approval of plans for the new animal care and control facility. Is there a motion that this be considered?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Paul?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Chief Thompson and John Clark, our architect on this project, have a PowerPoint presentation they'd like to show you. And I think after this, I'm sure they would probably like authority, if all the other approvals, required approvals are made, permission to bid the project at the appropriate time.
Tell me when to stop. Okay, I got it. Tell me when to stop. The screen's broken, thank you.
I'm probably about the best way to explain this project. Yeah. Yeah, I got it. Everybody see okay? What we have here is a site located on Industrial Drive, actually not too far from here. This blue footprint here is the existing animal control facility as it sits today. This little piece of burnt yellow is actual exterior dog kennels that exists out there. There's a fence line here that comes around this area that keeps the dogs secure. This is the asphalt existing. Please, if any of you have any questions while I'm going through this, please don't hesitate to ask.
John?
Yes.
If possible, you think you could use the mic by any
Oh,
chance?
absolutely, sure.
Let everybody hear each right. I always hate talking about back. Everybody understand that first slide? Okay. Second slide, this would be actually the renovated site plan. Here's the existing animal control facility, and here is the newly proposed animal control facility. One of the things that we always have to take into consideration is site and grading, and we placed the new building here for a few different reasons. One, it really is going to be easier to get over here to the exterior kennels and deal with those dogs, as well as the grade lines that aren't really depicted on this particular plan, but there's a pretty sharp fall off right there, and we really didn't want to spend any extra money. I'd rather put the money in the facility and not in a bunch of retaining walls. So site impact is minimized on this particular project. One of the unique features here, we're actually using some pervious paver technology here to kind of get beyond some of the stormwater management, which is kind of unique. But that's the renovated site plan. The facility is right around 3,000 square feet. So you can see the size and shape there. It's pretty much more than double what the existing facility is. Next slide, please. Here's a breakdown, an actual floor plan of the proposed facility. You can come in here, and this would be Industrial Drive, come in through a vestibule air brake. You have a reception area, business offices. You'll have a dedicated adoption room. This is a dedicated cat room that will have cages installed. Required toilet facilities. We actually have an exam room to where they can examine the animals that come into the facility. Laundry room. This is a mechanical electrical room and a break room for the facilities operators. At this point, we have a sound break between the dog kennels by incorporating a workroom. That workroom has a shower, has some freezers, some stainless steel countertops, and then you would enter into the actual back of the house here, which would contain all of your dog kennels and interior runouts. Basically, the facility, again, is right around 3,000 square feet. I think it's doing everything it needs to do with respect to several meetings with animal control staff, Chief of Police, Mr. Nutting, Mr. Brewer, et cetera, et cetera. Does anybody have any questions of the floor plan layout?
What do you estimate per square foot cost would be?
You know, I tried to keep it at around 3,000 square feet, so when you've got that plus the site development, I think the budget target of this is somewhere around 400. So, and we need to add in some equipment. These kennels and these cages, they're not cheap. They're stainless steel, but you got to think about it like long term. They'll be sitting out there for a very long time. So I think you're going to get a very, very good bang for the buck for the project. It's in permitting right now. As soon as we're officially let go green light, I want everything taken into consideration and approved before we bid it. That way there's no change orders. I mean, everybody hates that, right? So let's get everything approved and move on down the road. Yes, sir.
Who has the dog capacity?
You're going to have quite a bit. What we have here is essentially, 7 for each side, so a total of 14. I decided to kind of stop that. We all talked about it with the amount of dogs that are coming into the facility and out. Plus, you do have external capability that is a part of that whole fenced-in area to where you have external kennels. That's going to be reworked a little bit as a result of the project, just to really clean it up. A balance. Yes, sir. Quite a bit of capacity there.
Yeah, explain the overflow.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 other buildings in addition to this, obviously. The existing facility
Right.
that has space, and then the existing overflow capacity, which is the chain link that has all of that. Some animals, some of the dogs that we get are well socialized, and you can put more than one in a cage. Some of them are bad dogs, you can't put them with anything else. But so it really varies, but there's a very significant, very good sized capacity here for us to meet our needs. We also would expect that we'll use the existing facility, existing animal control facility, to sort of screen when the animals first come in for disease and that sort of thing. You don't want to take the diseased animals and put them in a healthy shelter, but you can end up having to put every dog down in the entire shelter. So we want to be able to quarantine them in one facility before moving them to the other.
Mr. Ellis, is it going to cause additional staff?
No. No, we're not anticipating any additional staff. We are, as a matter of fact, we're hoping we're going to be able to get some volunteers with this facility. The existing facility, I mean, frankly, nobody's going to volunteer to come work in there. With this facility, we feel like we can have people that will come in who will volunteer their time. Also, with the exam room, if we can get veterinarians to come in, maybe do reduced rates on spay and neuter and things like that, we can actually do it there at the facility.
You've got some enhanced program that has gone into this facility the existing one just does not have. And like he's saying, as far as volunteers are concerned, no one really operates or mans the facility day to day. So what we are going to do is incorporate a security system to where he can go in, Mr. Nutting can go in at all hours of the day or night and monitor what's going on that site.
I'm asking so many questions because Fido has a tendency to hobble around my house. For the last 3 years, I've been bombarded with them.
Really? Okay. All right. Next slide. These are just a couple proposed exterior renderings, perspectives. This would be along the front of the facility. Actually, we masked this in off of an image, and that is the actual existing animal control facility in the background. But, you know, predominantly you're going to have a little brick and a little cast stone here. I opted just for cost-saving measures to go with a cementous siding as well as an architectural dimensional shingle. I think that'd be commensurate to what's generally around the area. So I think it's going to work really well and stay budget-friendly. We got one more. And where it breaks along the backside, we're going to do that out of a split-face block, be more of a buff-type color. But I think it's going to be very attractive for you guys. I think it will carry you well down the road as far as needs are concerned. So I'd happy to entertain any questions at this time, but that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank y'all. All right.
You're just gonna stop automatically?
We've been meeting for a long time.
We have a motion of
Yes, sir.
this. Okay. All right, you have a motion and a second that this be taken under consideration. Floor is open for discussion.
Very enterprising.
Is there any way that you can take some of that office space and put dogs or cats or whatever else? I know that they may need a break room, but you take a break room, you get in the truck and start riding.
In order to get volunteers, you probably.
I mean, that's what I used to
need
do.
Keep it away
That's
from
what you used to do?
No, really, too.
So many slippers.
Well, we need to have something that's functional, that's going to represent our community well, and like I said, no one wants to work in the confined space that we have. I mean, it's just a nasty facility right now. We need to come up with something that will attract volunteers. There's some great, we've looked at some animal control operations in various counties. They've done great work with attracting volunteers, using things on the internet as far as being able to get animals adopted. And I think we can put nice equipment and things in here that'll make our program a lot more effective.
All right, any other comments or questions? So the motion is to approve these plans?
Yes, and then also, Mayor, I would like, after all the appropriate site plans and things have been approved, I'd like the authority to bid the project.
Okay, that's what you're voting for when you...
That's part of the motion, give the whole.
To bid it, yes. It is to approve the plans.
As designed.
And to bid it, you're not approving the bids, you're approving the bidding process.
Mr. Mayor.
And the approved plans, yes, sir.
I do have one comment or question for, I guess, the chief. Was there a committee that was put together to come up with some ideas for the architecture? Because it seems like there's a lot of money going into the architecture of a place where, you know, there's no other way to put it. It's going to be pretty much the demise of a lot of stray animals, unwanted animals. Seems like a lot of money being put into the architecture of this place. I mean, was there a committee that came up with, could maybe save the taxpayers some money, or because it looks pretty elaborate?
We used a number of people for this. We used animal control people. John Clark, as a matter of fact, specifically has designed veterinary offices, that sort of thing. So he already had a pretty good working knowledge of some of those things. Of course, David Brewer, our city engineer, was involved, and we had other people that came to the office just to sit down and talk to us and offer their ideas and opinions. You know, animals are very emotional subjects. We get some people with the little tears rolling down their cheeks. These are our babies that want us to build, you know, pristine facilities and put in saunas and hot tubs for their dogs. And then we have others that come in that say, no, we just need something functional to get them in and out of here. What we tried to strike here was a balance. We want something that will attract volunteers to help us with the services so we don't have to pay volunteers to do everything. We also want to be able to expand those services. So we have a veterinarian that's going to do spay and neuter. We can do it there on site. So there were a variety of those things. And we even looked at site planning and even some of the architectural work that John Clark put together, was specifically with cost in mind and looking at the long-term facilities. So yes, there were ideas taken from lots of people in the community, some that stopped in, some that met as a group. Some were police officers, some were animal control, and some were architects and engineers. So there was quite a variety of people that had some input into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Thompson. All right, any further discussion before we vote? Please call the roll.
Ellis.
No.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Sneed.
No.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 4-2.
3.2 is to discuss possibly take action on the monthly adjustment of electric rates. What have you done for us this month, Mr. Gardner?
Not too good. It's just about 6% for the month of March. Paying for the cold February and the remainder.
I thought I'd already paid that out of the last two checks. But
January was a rough month. EDA had to file off power off system.
yeah. Well, we're glad they kept the juice on. All right. 6%. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Carneal.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Ellis. Hubbard.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
Now, Brother Lemley, what about the gas rates this month?
rates was up 10.86% this month. Watching police on television yesterday evening, natural gas prices in the United States went up 30% since the first of the year, so contributed to an unusual cold winter.
Okay. All right, not what we wanted to hear, but we've got to keep that going as well. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carnell.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Mason. Pass 6-0.
3.4 is to discuss and possibly act on authorizing a gas system extension project in Orlinda. As you know, our gas system goes over a large part of Robertson County. Paul, do you want to say something about that to start with, or are we going to hear from Jimmy or what?
Well, Jimmy can fill in. We've got a extension along Highway 52. It's got a couple of benefits. It's going to be a very large user, which is going to be equivalent to quite a few residential customers. It's also going to improve the gas system. So there are really a couple of benefits to this program. We do have over $100,000 identified in the budget. We call it main extensions unknown. They're just simply mains that are unidentified at the time that or not specified at the time the budget is prepared. So the project is about, I think, $20,000 in pipe, valves, and materials. Does that sound right, Jimmy?
Yes. And Mr. Groves has agreed to pick up $7,000 of cost. He's a gentleman, officer Squire. We added one in last year for S&T Farms on Highway 49 East Coast. It's kind of a rather large one, a bigger one at Baggage Granary out here on 41 South. But this one is comparable to the S&T Farms. It's been a good user up there this year. So I asked if you would approve it. It's going to be a good thing. And plus it's going to tie in two dead ends of our lines. So we're going to do that at the same to make a better feed into all that with this extension.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Any discussion, additional discussion? Oh, wait a minute, don't have a motion. Let's have a motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
Now discussion. All right, vote your preference.
Mason.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Carnell.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Pass 6-0.
All right. Thank you. The next item is to discuss and possibly act on appointing a member to the Gas Scholarship Committee. The recommendation here.
I told Mr. Nutting that I'm available since Mr. Ellis is stepping down, since academics is sort of my forte.
All right, Mr. Hubbard has volunteered to serve in that position. Is there a motion Mr. Hubbard be appointed? Are there other nominees? Is there a motion then that Mr. Hubbard be appointed to this position?
I move Mr. Hubbard be appointed.
Second.
In discussion, please call the roll.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carnell.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Pass 6-0.
All right, now discuss and possibly act on continuing to provide assistance to the Ridgetop natural gas system. Paul, do you want to speak to that?
Well, thank you, Mayor. This is really a report. As you know, back in the summer, we started helping Ridgetop Gas get their system together. They had some personnel that left, and they've since hired somebody. This is really by way of a report. The official contract expired January 31st. They have hired a new person. He is very close to being operator qualified, which is a requirement with TRA, and could be any week now that this person will pass the final two components. At that point, they're on their own. We have provided them some good assistance, and they have also retained a gentleman who's a contractor, who's also operator qualified, to make repairs to their system. So I think they've got some good people at Ridgetop Natural Gas now, and I think we can cut the strings. But I did want to report to you, because the contract expired January 31st. The only other thing we're doing is helping this gentleman get operator qualified.
And so you are willing to continue it, you recommend that we continue this through what time period?
Well, it should be probably by no longer than the end of the month.
All right, is there a motion we continue to provide this assistance to Ridgetop for the rest of this month?
So move.
Second?
Second.
In discussion?
I'd like to offer an amendment. I'd like to offer this service until the operator becomes certified, or whatever the right word is. It may be longer than a month.
Let's just include that in the motion, the maker and the second. Okay. All right, is that understood? Let's vote on it then with this change in it. Call the roll, please.
Carneal.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Pass 6-0.
All right. Now to discuss and possibly act on authorizing the relocation of gas mains in the second phase of Highway 431 South widening between Walling Road and Old 431. Before we do that, Mr. Allen Ellis, what's the status on that project? I had a
Still in right away. It's not anywhere, any plans or any schedule to be done.
okay.
Now, the first section is in the 3-year plan, the section inside the city.
From what? From
41, Memorial Boulevard out to Walling Road. Walling Road on out to the end is not scheduled at all.
okay.
It's still in the 7-year right
All right,
away.
there's some plans that were in my mail today that I put, we have sent to you on that, okay. All right,
May I ask a very,
yes, sir.
not a very good question? How long does that 3-year plan last?
30 years.
We've been talking about this thing 15 years.
Usually it's 36 months.
Is there a motion that this relocation be authorized?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Paul?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this kind of stunning. We don't even get the first phase completed, and we're already on to the second. We just had relocated water and sewer and gas earlier in the year, or part of last year, I guess it was last year, and now we're asked to relocate on the second phase, the gas. So there are a couple of things that we're going to do here. First of all, the cost to actually relocate it is going to be close to $450,000, which will be reimbursable by the state. So they reimburse us very quickly on the water and the gas. It work very well, so don't anticipate any problem with the reimbursement. But while we're doing it, we thought it would be best to also improve the system at the same time. So there's going to be a component that the state's going to reimburse us, and then we're going to replace the 4-inch plastic main with a 6-inch steel main and some 6-inch plastic main to get better capacity at that end of our system. And that will be solely at our cost. So our system upgrades will be about $379,200. And in order to accommodate this, you did amend the budget earlier in the meeting, and that was, it's probably more than enough to do whatever work we're going to be able to do between now, including the engineering design, now and June 30th. We have to have the line relocated by December 15th, something like that, before the end of the year. So I recommend that we authorize the project and also the upgrade to the system.
All right, discussion?
Yes, sir. It's nice, and those little asterisks you got, it includes engineering, inspection, construction survey, and contingency. So 379 is the
That's our cost
That's
for
our
the
cost.
upgrade.
That's good. That's good.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the roll to be called.
Ellis.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carnell.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
Right, 3.8 is to discuss and take action on authorizing the mayor to execute a renewal of the current Billy Casper Golf Management Agreement, and that is to run through what, Paul?
We have just moved them up to November 30th so that we can prepare an RFP during the year and have plenty of time to do that, and then possibly have a new contract. It'll be either with them or a new company starting December 1st, which really puts the transition when we're not in the middle of golf season. Really, you don't want to transition a new contract right as you start golf season. So I think we need to keep that permanently from now on.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Carnell.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Mason.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right, 3.9, discuss and possibly take action on issues related to water treatment and emergency water supply, which is prompted by the crisis that we had last, let's see, was on
12 days ago.
yeah, a little more than almost 2 weeks ago. Mr. LeMasters, would you come to the podium? And I wanted to say also that I appreciate the hard work that, I know, Trent Morris and his people there and all that was done involving in this. It does point to the great need to have not only an additional water source and an additional water treatment source, because we never know when things of this nature may occur. But I think all of you handled the emergency very, very well. Now, did you want to say something, Paul?
Yes, I did, Mayor. A couple of things you want to cover. Roger's going to give a report on exactly what happened. Mr. Sneed has requested that we also talk a little bit about what we have available right now as far as interconnections. And lastly, I think we've talked about this, that, we've had an extensive master plan completed just this year, $360,000, $375,000, something like that. That's a lot of money. And one of the issues here, of course, we've talked about, where's our second source of water going to be? And we know we're not really up against a deadline on this thing yet. It's something we're going to have to start moving on. And I think it's probably something we need to start discussions with right away, with Logan Todd and anybody else you want to discuss things with. I think there are some other aspects to this. There are some other projects that they've been approached on, and I guess that's okay. But what we need to do is, first of all, they've been having these conversations with us. They need to carry on directly with us, and then we need to see if we need to expand our original plans to accommodate maybe other things that may be happening in the county. So,
Roger.
Our water intake is on the Red River. Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation regulations or rules require us or the state to do what's called a source water assessment. And a source water assessment is where we have to look at 5 miles upstream of our intake and try to determine whether or not there are places where pollutants can get in the water that could affect our water intake. We just have to go 5 miles upstream. And we look at farmers, we look at point discharges, we look at basically anything that might have an impact. We provide that information to TDEC. They come up with their source water assessment, and every year they say that our intake is reasonably susceptible to some sort of pollutant parameter. And fortunately, for years and years and years, we've been able to do really well. A couple of years ago, we had something come down that we have no idea what it was. It affected our ability to maintain a chlorine residual. Did not affect our ability to maintain a flock that goes on the filter that we can filter out and get clear water. Thursday, 12 days ago, about 4 o'clock in the morning, our operators were detecting a difficulty in a flock to form. Now, sediment in the water, it's called dirt, sediment, whatever you want to call it. We had a heavy rainfall event. A person cannot detect a turbidity of 5 in drinking water. You just cannot detect it. We have to maintain a 0.3, well, 0.1 overall, 0.3 on certain filters. The turbidity in the river, now this is called the Red River because it can change quickly. The turbidity was well over 700, and we can always treat 700 turbidity. We've never had a problem with turbidity over 700. We've treated twice that, and always with our alum has gotten very good filter runs. Whatever this was in the water, our alum, our aluminum sulfate, the main coagulant, would not create a really good flock. The flock is supposed to settle out into some specifically designed basins, so the water that goes to the top of the filters is relatively clear, but not clear enough. We like to have about 1.5 or 2 on top of the filter. It was getting up around 12, 13, 14, and our filters would not do well. They would bleed through the filters if we filtered. So they shut the plant down at 4 o'clock on Thursday morning. Trent gave me a call about 6:30 that morning before I even got to the office, telling me what was going on. I said, okay, I'll go out there and I'll meet with you to see what is going on. We determined that whatever was in the water, we have no idea what it was, but our alum would absolutely not do the job. Trent and I had several conversations. I talked with David at Brewer and Terry Beers, our engineer, and Paul. We got together Thursday morning. We said, we got to figure out what's going on, see if we can get some help at the plant. And we did call Tennessee Association of Utility Districts. They have a guy that's called a circuit rider. He's a certified water operator. He travels throughout the state for TAUD, providing technical assistance. He had a meeting in Monterey. He's going to be there mid-afternoon. We also contacted a company called American Developmental Corporation. They have supplied the city with some chemicals in years past, not this year, but in past years. So they sent a chemist to our plant to work with our folks there. And they also brought some of the chemicals that they provide that we have never used before. One of the things they brought was called polyaluminum chloride. So they ran some jar tests using our alum, and they ran some jar tests. A jar test is it's a device that has 6 jars. There's a stirred mechanism for each jar, and they add varying levels of chemicals to each of these jars to raw water. And then over a period of 30 minutes, you see which one settles best to the bottom, and then that's the one that determines the amount of alum you add. With more turbidity, you add more alum. So they ran jar tests with our alum to make sure that we weren't doing anything wrong. They ran jar tests with our aluminum chloride to determine how that would do, and it worked very well. Now this was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Thursday afternoon. Paul and I and Gina and Terry and David determined at that point we didn't know what ADC was doing. So we said, just to make sure, we need to come up with an advisory. We need to tell folks, we have a limited amount of water in storage. We cannot treat the water. It's beyond our control to treat it. We need people to start conserving water, to reduce water. And that's where the advisory number 1 came out.
Is that about 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
It was about 4 o'clock, 4:10 or somewhere around there. We dated it, signed it, and dated, and we got it out in the airwaves. We called Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5. We talked with Smoky Barn. We talked with WSGI. We tried to get out as widespread as we could. And everybody was really good about putting that water advisory out. Of course, anytime you put something like this out, people are going to have questions. They're going to jump to conclusions and all that sort of stuff. About 4 o'clock Thursday afternoon, we were running jar tests again, and it looked like our alum was starting to begin to work better than what it had. So we ran some more tests, and sure enough, the alum was beginning to work. So what it told me that whatever was in the water was in a slug that took it about 12 hours to get past. And when I left the water plant mid-morning, I went down to look at the Red River. It was flowing quickly. We'd had a 3 or 4 inch rainfall event. The water was high. It was flowing quickly. So if there was a slug that was 12 hours long, that means it was many miles long. We had no idea what was in there. During that mid-afternoon, when we determined that the polyaluminum chloride would work, ADC said we can bring in some bulk vats. We can fill those. We'll have a dosing tank, and if you want us to, we can start feeding polyaluminum chloride because this is going to work. Well, about that time, we figured our alum is starting to work. We said, let's go ahead and start this polyaluminum chloride. We had done for about 2 days' work. It worked really well. flock was settling in the basins like it should have. We had very low turbidity on top of the filter. So we were able to put water back into the system starting about 4 o'clock. We started out at a low filter rate, about 1.5 million gallons a day. We kept building up, building up. Within 24 hours, we were filtering 5.5 million gallons a day. We normally produce about 5. So we were building our tank levels back up. So we came up with the idea that Friday morning, we need to put out a second advisory telling folks that we're almost back up to normal, we're producing water normally, but we would like it still kind of conserve water usage because we need to build a level up in our tanks. When our tanks are full, we have the equivalent of about 2 days storage. If we stop right then, we could run for 2 days at normal usage. Well, if we have that problem, we're going to tell people to start conserving so that 2 days can be extended out. Well, we started this out right at half full. So we only had, at full usage, about 1 day's worth of water. But with people conserving, we figured we could stretch it out until we see what happens. Now, what this showed me is that we are susceptible to something at our intake. Some things we can treat, some things we can't treat. We had been looking at, in fact, we have had interconnections with Pleasant View Utility District and East Montgomery. That stopped about 2 years before I got here, about 12 years ago. But we still have the places where we can connect between us and the other utilities. In fact, about 2.5 years ago, we provided water to Pleasant View Utility District through one of our, we have 2 places where we can do that. We put a meter in. They had an electrical storm that fried some of their circuit boards. So we provided water to them for about 8 hours. It's a matter of disinfecting some lines, putting a 4-inch water meter in, and opening some valves and let it go. Well, we've been evaluating that, and we have various zones of pressure within our entire distribution system. A pressure in any zone is developed by the elevation of a water tank, and we have water tanks at several different elevations. So we have, like out on York Road, we have that tank out there. It's at a certain elevation, and there is a pressure zone that is pumped for water from one zone into that, and then that tank provides pressure for those defined people. We have a 17th Avenue tank over there above 17th Avenue, and that provides mainly water for Bill Jones Industrial Drive, Legacy, Stallbrook, in that area in there. We can get water, we pump water to Greenbrier. We can get water back from Greenbrier when that pump shuts off. So that 17th Avenue can kind of go both directions. The tank on Tom Austin Highway is the one that provides pressure to most of our system, all of Springfield, most of Coopertown, and that sort of stuff. So we have several distinct zones. So we say we can put water back into the system. If we get water from Pleasant View, which we can do, we think, we've never tried it, their tank is about the same elevation as our York Road tank. So if we were to put that valve, that meter back in, but put it the other way, we can get water from Pleasant View back into our system. Only for those folks in the York Road area. I'm in that zone. so I feel pretty good about that.
We want to feel good about it one too, so let's give us part B of that.
Now bear in mind, our zones between different water utilities are at the outer edges of this utility, which means your smaller lines are where us and White House come together, for us at Pleasant View, us and East Montgomery come together. So there are limited opportunities for tying all this thing together. Terry Beers has talked with the folks at White House Utility District, and there are several places where we can get water from them. We have done some analyses, we've talked with their engineers. The best one will be on Oakland Road, where Legacy Drive goes from Legacy over to Oakland Farm. They have a 6-inch line and we have an 8-inch line that they cross, and we should be able to connect those two with maybe a couple of feet of vertical pipe and some taps and that sort of stuff. They have a pressure advantage of 40 or 50 pounds. They estimate they can give us anywhere from 800 to 1,000 gallons per minute from their system into our 17th Avenue zone. Now, we have valves closed between our 17th Avenue system and our Tom Austin system, but we can open some of those valves and get water from 17th into Tom Austin under certain circumstances. So we can kind of push water back in, but not enough to do the entire job. There are several other places where we can get water from White House Utility. On 257 at Daniels Road, we think that we got a line where there used to be a 2-inch meter in there where we provided water to them. On Highway 76 out near the high school, we have a 10-inch water line where we cross one of their 4-inch lines. We can tap that and get water there. I think there's another place for Gregory Road where we have a meter where we used to provide water to them during the summer months of the year. Well, they've done some adjustments, and now they have bought water for us in several years. They have higher water. We can get water back in there. So we have some limited options on getting water in. The one on Legacy Drive, we're going to go ahead and make some taps, where all we have to do is open the valve, maybe put a meter in, and in the space of, once we get the taps made, in the space of half an hour, we can start getting water from them very quickly. We're going to go ahead and get that done. Those are the main places. We cannot get water from Adam Cedar Hill. We're at a higher pressure than them. We can provide them with water, but it can't come back. East Montgomery, we're still trying to determine whether or not we can get water back from them. But again, that would only come into the York Road system.
Paul?
So really, the best with what we have right now, absent a second source of water, is maybe a little over 1 million, maybe 2 million gallons a day, where we normally, our system takes 5.5.
That is correct.
And that's about the best we can do. So we'd have to have some real conservation on that.
Yes.
Which leads us to the next question, which is the second source of water, and maybe, visiting pretty quickly with some of our prospective suppliers.
Well, that's what I think we need to do pretty quickly. Clay?
Mr. Mayor, I had this put on the agenda because I thought that where he's talking about where the lines cross at White House, I thought that was already done. I was surprised that under the circumstances that years ago when we talked about the possibility of a second source, that wasn't already having taken place. But you said that y'all were going to get that done,
Yes.
right? The other issue was the possibility of maybe getting some water from Logan County. Is that what you call it, Logan County?
Logan Todd.
It's Logan Todd. It's
Todd.
actually Guthrie is where it is.
Is there right-of-way issues that have to be resolved? That's the first thing, right, is getting some right-of-way issues to get the pipeline built.
The long-term planning's looked at a bunch of different alternatives. Now, the one that was most cost-effective was getting raw water from Logan Todd, taking it to our water plant, expanding the water plant, and having another finish line from the plant into town.
Right. Well, we talked about that before, and we got factories here in town, and you're talking about $350-something thousand. That's a drop in the bucket for what it would take one of these factories. If they were down 1 hour, they've already lost that much money in production. And I think the factories who come here or here now expect us to be able to supply them with water so they don't have thousands of people through all the factories combined that use water. They're going to have to shut down. The first thing we'll have to do is I'd like to do some taste samples of the various water supplies. I know we've talked about quality issues with this one or that one. And you can put reports on paper about the turbidity and nitrates and things, but in wintertime, the water's going to taste different than the summertime. We need to begin looking at where we want to go with that and start getting some samples. I think that'd be a good start, so we can have some kind of idea of what water tastes better than others, because they're different. And then when we make that determination, we need to start getting some engineering, getting at least a right-of-way secured, whether we put the money in the pipeline or not, while properties are depressed in price or it's not built up. We need to secure these right-of-ways where we plan on putting the pipeline once we make that decision, because we're going to have some more water. We know that's going to have to happen, and we don't need to be waiting until we get to a have-to point before that happens. We need to be planning on this and getting that right-of-way secured. And one more question for you. The public alert message that was put out, did it have any effect? Did people conserve, or did they just go about normal business?
I don't know. I haven't. When our water plant was shut down, we really can't compare 5.5 million a day to 5 million the next day, because we started ramping up slowly. So we really don't know. We were able to recover fairly quickly as far as filling our tanks. So I think it did have an effect, but I can't quantify it.
Yeah, just doing some math, how much did it drop, how much we put in, make that balance, I mean, it's.
I'll have to come up with that.
Well, within about 7 hours of the advisory was put out about 4. By 11, we had the PAC, the new chemical, in the system, and they were treating water. They were slowly ramping it up.
They were treating about 4.5 million by 11
Saturday
o'clock.
morning, the tanks had actually recovered a little
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
So, I mean, not a whole lot, but I mean, there were about 40, and the one in the North Industrial Park was about 500,000, and then about half capacity.
Right.
And then East Hillcrest was, had been about 60 at 4 o'clock and was like about 65, something like
Right.
that capacity.
All right, we have, as the board knows, and many people who've watched our meetings, we have thoroughly discussed the options, the long-term options that we have, and we pretty well, after several analysis, all of which leads us to the Cumberland River, it's just a matter of which direction. The options included tying in with White House.
No, Metro.
Well, I know,
Oh, I'm
but the
sorry.
original options were White House, Metro, building our own plant along the Cumberland River, or tying in with Logan Todd, which is located their treatment plant at Guthrie.
Right.
Logan Todd had approached us because they are only using about 40% of their capacity and would like to have us as a customer. And they're located, the plant at Guthrie would be about 20 miles, well, actually of our system, they wouldn't be that far away from us. It's a little different with Metro, but the options were, after the engineering reports were given to us, the recommendations pretty well narrowed down to either going with Metro or going with Logan Todd. We haven't had any formal discussions as such with either, but we have had a preliminary look at, some of us have, Paul and I have been to the Logan Todd treatment plant, we've looked at it, and we know they are anxious to have us as a customer, which is a very positive thing for us. This needs to be put on the front burner. So I think that we need to, if we can have it by the next meeting, have an exploration of how to move from this and be deciding whether we go with Metro or whether we go with Logan Todd. And then then the right-of-way acquisitions, et cetera, could be determined. I know the cheapest alternative, I think you felt, Roger, was the raw water from Logan Todd. But after this experience with the treatment plant, I think we need the option of a different treatment, an alternative treatment plant. So I'd feel a lot more secure, let's just say if we went with Logan Todd, to have that water being treated at Guthrie and brought up here in case we had a problem at our treatment plant. If we're sending them raw water, but the treatment plant's not being effective, you see, would give us an alternative both on the line and on the treatment. You'd have two facilities.
There were a bunch of alternatives looked at, and the two that are most cost-effective, the cost-effectiveness takes into account what it costs to actually put something in the ground and then to operate it for the next 20 years.
Right.
The two most cost-effective were to buy finished water from Metro. That was relatively low cost to put pipe in the ground and pump stations and tanks, and then relatively high operation and maintenance cost to buy water from them, finished water from them. The other cost-effective alternative was to buy raw water from Logan Todd. It had a pretty high expense, capital cost to put pipe in the ground and pump stations and go to our water plant and expand the plant and bring that in, but low operation and maintenance costs because we would operate it under our own system, minimum more. So the cost-effective alternatives were about equal, but the expenditures to put something in the ground were vastly different. The option to buy finished water from Logan Todd was pretty high because you had about a similar cost to put something in the ground. Well, they'll kind of argue with that, but there was a high cost of buying water, a little higher than it was to buy water from Metro.
Okay. So we need to move forward with that, and I don't, Paul, are you prepared to try to get something going?
This is probably something, Mayor, that we need to have a workshop on, maybe just have the Logan Todd people and the Metro people in at the same time. I mean, it's to really start moving on which direction we really want to go, maybe have them work up some preliminary numbers for us and then just sit down and just have a general discussion. We could either have a separate workshop with both of them if you wanted to.
let's try to get in touch with them then. We can't set a time tonight, but we can.
I thought we've covered this ground. I was pretty sure that instead of having workshops, having these people come in and compete with each other, I thought we already worked that out. I thought it was going to be Logan County raw water.
Well, I think we don't know that, but we've got it narrowed down at least to that. Let's, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to put a spin on this before you go to it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
One thing, while we are doing this, we like to be good neighbors, but this water situation is for Springfield City. Let's keep it up front and our future growth. So we got to be a little selfish with this situation, not doing all this to supply the whole county.
Well,
I mean, sometimes these entities come in, you know, when we're focusing on ventures that will sustain us, that the county want to cut in. So we have to be a little selfish with that, okay? Because we cannot, you know, do these ventures and just. And I know right saying this, okay, because you just look at expansion of industries, expansion of population, and stuff like that, and you're gonna need that water.
Well, what we're looking at is two things. What we've known all along, and after we had the engineering study, that we have to have a new long-term source of water within 10 years, is what they told us. That we know. But we also need emergency connections too, in addition to what been proposed, where the connection there with White House we need, and this long-term source would be an alternative source as well. So that would kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Well, that's Paul. Do you need anything more to move forward on? Trying to get a proposal before.
Do you want to visit? Does the full board want to meet with these entities to ask some questions?
Mr. Mayor, could you poll everybody on that?
Well, let's just see.
I can remember from past conversations, I don't think that would be necessary. From my gathering from past conversations, the meetings we've had on this subject, thought we'd talked it to death about like this golf course stuff. I was almost certain was going to go to Logan County raw water.
Well, let's start with them. I mean, that wouldn't hurt. Jerome?
I thought it was going to Logan County with treated water, which would eliminate, it would take some of the pressure off of our treatment plant.
I agree. James?
We haven't beat it to death. This is just a new spin that came on tonight, so we definitely need that study.
Okay. Willie?
I think we should authorize Mr. Nutting to go forward and talk to Logan County.
Okay, Logan Todd, you contact them and we'll go from there. Thank you, Roger, and appreciate your help during the crisis. Now, the item 310, you know, this item of the mixed drink revenue that somehow or another the state Department of Finance had never realized that all of the locals weren't aware of the fact that we have to turn that over to the school system. I think this story that came about had to do with Hendersonville and where they owe the money. We owe them money too. This was something we didn't know we had to do. It's been a statewide problem, and MTAS has been looking at it and trying to get a remedy to it. So what's the situation here, Mr. Ellis? I mean, Mr.
Well, thank you. Am I flattered? I should be flattered by that.
But I was just thinking about his former experience with the school system. Pardon.
I did. Well, obviously, through the memo, we initiated the liquor by the drink in 1999. The county has gone ahead and gotten with the state comptroller's office to verify how much we took in. We took over $415,106.47 in prior years, and half of that is due to the Board of Education. What my suggestion is that most cities have just learned about this, and they are entering into some form of negotiation with their school boards. In the interim, what they're doing is paying this year, and that's what I recommend, So far to date, we've taken in a little over $32,000. We owe them $16,000. We need to pay them half every month. And then what I would recommend is that Mayor Carneal and anyone else on the board who wants to participate, maybe negotiate with the county and the Board of Education to see how we can pay what we owe over a number of years.
Okay.
Have a motion, sir. I've been sitting here.
Make it. It does.
And I had forgotten we were dealing with the school board. It's not the county, it's the school board.
See if we have money left there.
If I read that correctly, we'll owe $207,500 and something dollars, I believe. I would want to negotiate 5 years at 41,000, whatever divided out, or 4 years at 50,000.
Is there a second?
Second on that one.
In discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The amount of money that the budget shows that we collect each year is $42,500. That's our annual income, is that right? So we collect this about a 4-year plan to get them paid off.
Back pay.
I'd say Welch on it, but that'd be my guess.
No.
It's not costing the bill. Ethics,
The issue was, I mean, everybody had been in a different situation. Some counties and cities just decided, well, we'll just start working this out, and a lot of people didn't even know that it had even existed. So there was a hope that the state comptroller would work something out that would be a uniform recommendation for everybody. And there's just so much going on, so many different situations, that they just said the best idea is to just negotiate and work that out. As Mr. Sneed says, I think the most we've ever taken in, and just for us, is $57,000. So 40 or 50 in a year. So we're virtually giving our mixed drink revenue to them to pay it off.
Okay. Ms. Ellis, you've made a motion?
Yes, sir.
I second it.
All right, any discussion? Call the roll.
Mason.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
All right, now we get to the annual consideration of fireworks. Is there a motion to authorize the contract with the same company?
So moved.
Right, Tony? Okay.
Somebody make the motion.
Is there a motion?
So moved. And I second it. Mr. Mason made it, and I second it.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Mason, seconded by Mr. Hubbard. Did that amount stay the same?
No, that's really the issue you have to decide. They've, for over 10 years now, I think the price has been $9,900, payable half in one fiscal year, half in the other. They have raised the price approximately, let me get to the right deal here, a little over $495. And so it would raise the annual fee to $10,395. We'd pay half in the next month when we execute the contract, and half after July 4th. The new amount, we could keep the same number of shells. You could keep the 9,900, but you'd cut down on the size of the shell, the number of shells.
Okay, well, they have certainly worked with us well, and we had the time that we didn't do it, they forgave some of the money, so, I mean, we've worked with them well.
My recommendation would be to approve it at the higher price and keep the same shell.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, did we have a motion?
No,
Yes,
sir.
we-
Oh, yes, we do.
We did, we have a motion.
All right, we
This
have a
is
motion.
discussion
I believe I
phase.
heard you first, then I want to get you.
Yes, I got a question for Mr. Nutting. Last year at this time and in years past, I think that you were going to try to find some sponsors for this. I mean, other cities have banks or someone else who does this for goodwill, get some publicity out of it. When we passed this last year, I thought that when we got to this point where we are right now, we was going to have in our hands some people who are going to sponsor
I think
this.
it's a great idea. Has that been pursued this year, Mr. Phelps?
Yes, sir. However, we are bringing in 1,000 of our closest friends in July also for the state tournament this year.
Okay. So they're,
Very similar to what we did in 2012.
so they're helping us,
We're beating every business in town to death trying to get stuff for that tournament.
for that, okay, which brings us in quite a bit of revenue, or brings the city merchants in. Paul?
Yeah, and I think the other point is, I mean, I agree with Mr. Sneed that would be great if we get some sponsorship, and I think we will pursue that. But remember, the biggest competing thing that we've had is concerts in the park. We have relied on contributions for that as well. So that's fine.
So we got to be fair with our businesses, because they do get called on an awful lot for a lot of causes. All right, we have a motion and a second that this be, excuse me, James.
Yeah, you ignored me. No, it does. It will give the citizens something. It's been a big turnout, and it's even though I don't care nothing about it personally, but it's something that our citizens like.
All right. Any further discussion?
I have one question, sir.
Mr. Ellis?
I was under the assumption that when you reached $10,000, you had to bid this. And I was under the assumption, that's why the contract was $9,900, and we paid half of it one year and half of it the next year. What is our bid policy?
Our bid policy is $10,000 or more bid, but there are sole sources for these. You can bid it if you want, but they pretty much have different territories.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these people. I'm just saying that was my understanding from day one, that's the reason the price was $9,900 for 3 or 4 years. It stayed under the $10,000 bid requirement.
The $9,900 gave you a show of 672 shells. That has not changed in 10 years. They will offer you the $9,900 show this year, but it's going to go down almost to 90 shells. So, you know, if we will do whatever the board instructs us to do, okay?
But the 90 shells, I mean, you know, with the reduction of 90 shells, you're still gonna have a good show, right? You're still gonna have a good show.
I think so.
Still have the same show we've been having.
Because I have to agree with Mr. Ellis on our policy, so.
Paul?
Here's the issue. You have to schedule these shows.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is the problem. You got to make a decision now, or there will be no show,
And I
no
understand.
matter who you go with.
I understand, but are we gonna suspend? Look where we are.
You have flexibility on things that are sole source, but you have to decide whether, with all the things that they do and all the people they have regularly scheduled in, and most of these people keep repeat performances. So you will have to decide whether, you know, you want to view that as a sole source, and it's not absolutely a sole source, but the fact is that these people are scheduled at different places, different fireworks.
And this is our suspending the rules, per se.
Well, you've got a common sense situation. You've got a company that's been providing you this for about 10 years, and they haven't raised the price. This year, they've gone up about 5%. About, how much is that, 5%? Yeah, about 5%.
Less than 5%.
And it looks like we're in a bind on the time, so whatever Paul thinks is the proper thing to do is what I want to go along with.
Well, I feel comfortable just the nature of how you have to work these shows that, to go ahead and do this year, for the one time to keep the price reasonable. As long as you're all in agreement, you're comfortable with that. And then we can start exploring, you know, for the following year pretty quickly. And we'll have to start doing it like this week or next week and start lining up who would be interested in providing.
Put it to the vote, let the vote go ahead and decide.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote your preference when your name is called.
Snyder.
Aye.
Carneal.
Aye.
Hubbard.
I guess aye.
Sneed.
No,
Pardon me?
no.
Ellis.
No.
Mason.
Aye.
Pass 4-2.
All right, now with the consent portion of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
The entire consent,
It's just one, isn't it?
Just one item.
second.
Yeah.
All right, please call the roll on the consent docket.
Carnell.
Aye.
Snyder. Mason. Hubbard.
Aye.
Ellis. Sneed.
Aye.
Pass 6-0.
Mr. Nutting?
All right, just one thing. Chief Hamel, you want to just give everybody just a real quick overview. I'm giving your fire reports for 2013. I've asked the chief just to go over it real quickly with you, and I have nothing else after Chief Hamel is through.
Thank you, Mr. Nutting. 2013 calls for service was a new record of 2,792 calls. The 2012's record, which was 2,599. Some interesting points. Please turn to page 9. Page 9, it's the estimated both building and content value for 2013 was $11,642,929. We had an estimated building loss and content loss of $221,950 for a 1.9% loss rate, which continues to be good. Pages 10 and on through, what's the wards? Pages 10 through 15. Wards 1 had a new record of 755 calls. Ward 2 had a new record of 537 calls. And Ward 6 had a record number of calls of 401. We attributed a lot of that to the Hydromax smoke testing, the non-irritant smoke that has been going through our city, testing the sewer systems, which created a lot of false alarms, which we also had an increase in false alarms.
Okay. I'm in Ward 1, that's why I would say it's so high.
Yes.
Jimmy, your total for the year was 2799?
No, the total for the year was 2792,
2792.
a new record. All in all, it's a as our population ages, and it's a lot of economics
Don't talk
involved.
about that. Population ages.
Yes, sir, I'm aging too.
Some people are just more sensitive to it than others.
Right, we have a larger population. You got the economic issues. A change in districts was another reason why Mr. Hubbard's area is more, we have more calls for service in that area. But as the population grows and ages, so will the calls for service grow. Just to let you be aware of that. And finally, if you go back to page 2. Page 2 is a very, very important report. It's the overlapping calls for service. Although not a record, we still had 12.85% of the call volume that's overlapping calls, which is defined as one or more calls for service before a previous call for service was completed. And during the prospective calendar year, so many times this has occurred, 359 times. And when they do occur, the department is at risk of not being able to send an adequate firefighting force for structure fires, emergency vehicle extrication responses, and or other emergency calls for service in a timely manner. And page, the next page, the following page, it shows the hour, overlapping calls on a given hour, and you can see that 8 o'clock in the morning is peak, where we have multiple calls going on at the same time. 2 or 3, in fact. It is not unusual to have all 3 of our engine companies going on calls at the same time. And that's all I have, and I thank you very much.
Jimmy, thank you very much. Appreciate the good job you're doing. Unless there's something further.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
You got something, Clay?
That's what I was going to ask the chief about when you change the districts, it skewed the numbers so that they're not consistent. We can keep a pattern. Was there any reason why? There's no, I just don't see any real reason why you needed to change the political districts, which now skews the numbers for that area. They should have been kept the same, I think, or go back to where the old districts were, because I see no advantage in moving the districts because we redistrict our wards, while what you were using to come up with your figures in those particular areas, as the cities broke down.
We didn't have a choice on changing
ours, but they didn't have to follow our districts. They could have just kept their zone so that the numbers would stay the same with the.
But how would you do, you're gonna have to be operating on two different, why would you not do it?
Because it skewed the numbers that we're looking at.
But you're gonna keep those for 10 years, aren't you?
But I mean, if they just have their fire zones or fire districts and they kept the numbers that would happen.
Their response has nothing to do with districts, really.
Right. Well, I mean, they broke down how many calls they got per district.
Yeah, but
and
that's
they moved
just to
their
show you the
districts
area.
because we moved ours, and it threw the numbers off. We just talked about that.
But your total went up overall by a significant amount.
Those districts are the wards. The numbers are in our firehouse software. On every call, we have to, when we make a call for service, we have to make a report. That report is sent to the National Fire Incident Reporting System. In our firehouse software program, it calls for a ward or district number, and that's where we put it in.
In my ward, for instance, my ward is heavily diversified with manufacturing, nursing homes, and residential homes, and commercial. So it's really top-heavy, so I can understand why mine is.
Mr. Mayor, one other comment.
Yes, sir.
In my neighborhood, there was a call for an ambulance, and the dispatcher, which I assume is up at the top of the hill, they were specifically told not to send the fire department because it wasn't an extra need for a fire department. It's just an ambulance. They sent it all anyway. Just talking about common sense in dealing with another issue just prior to this. Shouldn't there be, if somebody specifically says, or is there a question, couldn't they ask the question? Because that's what they're trained for. They ask questions, they extract information out of people. If they can ask the right kind of questions, then we could reduce this. We got to reduce this. We can't just keep throwing money at it because we can't figure out a way to reduce these costs.
The problem, the situation.
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Okay.
Well, I have one last thing I want to say.
Okay.
TCAP is coming, so I want to tell the citizens to work with the teachers, and let's try to get our kids ready to up those scores because our future of our city hinges on education.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you for your attention.